Hello, good evening. If you are just joining me in this evening session, let me use this opportunity to welcome you once again to this channel. It is Research and Statistics, and my name is Dr. Felix Oyeleye. I've actually promised that from time to time I will be coming up to share ideas that will actually help you in your research, be it as undergraduate students or you are early researcher. This channel promises to be very informative, very supporting when it comes to academic research. So join me this evening as we do it again, as we're going to be doing it some other time, as we dive into the concept of academic research. So, if you have ever been confused about how to take off, maybe in your thesis as postgraduate students, or you are interested in the field of publication, this channel promises to be very, very informative, and it provides support in different areas on scientific writing, uh, coming up with research problem, crafting your research objective, research design, and even on data analysis. So please share the video if you are just joining me for the first time, and we're going to get right into it. And don't forget to drop your comments if you have questions, either from some of the videos uh, on our channel, or you have question as it affects your ongoing research, please don't hesitate to drop your question. So because this evening I'm going to be taking as many questions as possible. I'm going to be looking at the chat box, taking as many questions as possible as time permits us. And like I promised, we're going to be doing this very frequent because I get a lot of calls uh, on from students and also colleagues on one area or the other as it affects their research. So this channel has been dedicated, okay? This live stream has been dedicated to provide support, to provide a sort of a guidance even for us as it affects academic research. So um, while I expect your response and your question, I'm going to be discussing this evening a very important topic that will actually help each and every one of us. I title it Research Process 101. Okay, from idea to proposal. For those that joined me yesterday, I discussed a few things about the foundation of academic research, where you should actually start or where academic research actually starts. You see, the challenge many a times we do have when it comes to academic research is that we often start at the wrong point, okay, or start wrongly. But the essence of this live stream is to provide you insights that will actually help you to know the takeoff points when you want to embark on any academic research. The takeoff point. And for those that joined me yesterday, I said the takeoff point is to establish a field of interest. You must narrow things down to a field of interest. In humanity, maybe you are in humanity, field of social sciences, you are in the field of education, or maybe you are in biomedical science, or maybe you are in a pure and applied science, or engineering, or technology, whichever field of research you have found yourself. Now you must narrow things down to a field of interest. Now, after you have established a field of interest, the next thing you want to do is to get into what I call extensive literature search. Okay? You must get into what we call extensive literature search. Research essentially is about solving problem, but it's important we understand that problem is used contextually when it comes to academic research. It is it actually connotes what we describe in our daily life. Okay, so you must problem. So the first thing to do is to go to now. It is through extensive literature search you will actually establish research gap. Research gap is not something you can just think of on your own. Many a times what you may think could be a research gap may have been problems or problem that has been solved by some other people. That is why it is important to do an extensive literature search. You must download sufficient publication. Maybe you want to visit your Google Scholar. Okay, say for instance, a student has thought of looking at student stress. Okay, now you don't just cook up a topic from that. You must go into literature and establish what has been written about student stress. Okay, what are the latest student stress? So you can appreciate the fact that literature search is very, very critical. It's like the hatch room, or call it the hatchery, where we come up with research problem, where we identify research gap. So that is why sometimes when you meet a very experienced researcher, and maybe you have been assigned to someone to supervise, to such person to supervise you, the first assignment is likely going to give you is that, look, go and download so numbers of article on this particular field, on this particular area, or on this particular topic. Now you have to read that article very well, establish the major focus of those articles. Of course, you have you make sure they are within the area of context, and then you want to establish the focus, the objective of the article. You want to establish the method used in that particular publication, and sometimes you also want to establish the methodology. You want to establish the sampling technique, everything that may be very, very critical to that particular paper, the research design. And then you want to go through the conclusion aspects, the conclusion section of that particular paper. You see, scientists generally they leave behind clue, okay, as to the possible next line of action when they make their publication, when they submit their research findings. Okay, and that is the gap that you are looking for as a research student. So, like I said, today we're going to be looking at research process 101, and we want to look at from ideal. Thank you very much for those that are joining me. I look forward to pick your question. Ogechi, I can see you there. Ogechi. Okay. So please like the video, share with others. There are a lot that could benefit from this live question and answer on academic research. Please don't hesitate to share it with your colleague and other friends. Thank you very much. Now, so I was saying that uh, we're going to be talking about research process itself. I have a tons of video on research process on the channel. Please don't hesitate to check them out. So we're looking at hashing the idea and then developing a proposal from your idea. And that is what we're going to be focusing on this evening, even as I anticipate questions even from you. So we look at what research itself really is, okay? And the full process from your idea to proposal writing, conducting the research, and even when you get to the level of publication. And I'm also going to highlight, based on my experience with students, a few common mistakes that students often make when they embark on academic research. The common mistakes students actually make and how you can actually avoid such mistakes. Okay, so let's start by defining what does research itself actually means. Now, in a layman term, research question, collecting data, and generating knowledge to solve problems. So essentially, research is all about solving problems. But recall I mentioned that the term problem is contextual, okay? You must understand the context the word problem is actually used. Research is not necessarily designed uh, to meet a day-to-day need, okay? But there's what you call problem in the research perspective. The coinage of that word is important to have clarity on it. We're going to be discussing detail of that in practical terms as we continue. But please understand it's a systematic process of asking questions. When you ask questions and you collect data and then you generate knowledge from it to solve problem, then you say we are conducting academic research. Now, it's important to understand what research process is all about, which is the big picture itself. Okay? Research is a process, and when you follow that process through, you will get the expected result. Okay? And I'm going to summarize the process in 7 steps. 7 steps of research process. The first one, I've mentioned it, is identifying a problem. The next step is to formulate your research question. Now let's go back to the first step, identifying a problem. Again, I will repeat again and again that you identify a problem as a product of extensive literature search. You have downloaded sufficient paper in that particular area, in that particular field, and you have gone through that particular paper. Okay, and in the course of doing that, you have done your jotting, you have extracted essential element from that paper, you have looked through the abstract, you have looked through the conclusion of that particular paper. You are going to get the problem that is most relevant to solve in that particular field. So again, you want to identify a problem. Number two, you want to formulate research question. Now, research questions are usually extracted from the problem. Okay? When you say student stress, you can generate question around student stress. What is the cause of student stress? Okay? What is the statistical uh, uh, picture of student stress? All what you are doing is that you are trying to interrogate the problem itself. Okay, so the second step is to formulate research questions. Now, of course, from your questions you can now have research objectives. Very, very important. And then the third step is to choose your design. Okay, but please, again, research is a process. From that problem you have established, from it you generated questions, from the question you have established objective. It is those objectives, okay, your research objective, you are going to design, the research design will come out from, because the research design is a plan to address those research objectives. Okay, and from the research design, then you talk of the methods you are going to use. Okay, and of course we can still link this back even uh, to extensive literature search, because there are standard methods to solve certain problems. So you must familiarize yourself with literature, the kind of method that is used, the standard method, the approved method, the gold standard method, because it will ultimately determine if your finding will be considered credible. All right. So if you are still joining, if you are just joining me, please don't hesitate to subscribe. I can see, okay. I can see some are still joining me. Thank you very much. Please like the video so that others can actually find it as well. It's a great pleasure having you with me this evening. And like I said, I'm going to be doing this frequently, but please don't hesitate to drop your question. The goal of this live section is so that I can interface with all my subscribers directly and attend to your question. Okay? Please don't hesitate to drop your question. I'm going to be going through the comment section. I'll pick the question randomly and attempt to answer those questions. So back to what I was actually discussing or describing the research process. So after you have chosen your design, which is the third step, the first step is to collect the data. Okay. Now, the kind of data you are going to collect will be dictated by the research question itself or the research objective as well. Okay. It will determine the kind of data you are going to collect. And that is now followed by the data analysis. Your data analysis will be informed by what you intend to achieve, okay? Because the whole idea is to answer those research questions. So let's start again from the first one. Number one, we identify the problem. Number two, you want to formulate research question and also coin research objectives from it. Okay, the next is to establish your research design. You want to carefully choose your research design, okay, and then the methods you are going to use. And number four, you want to collect the data. And number five, you want to analyze the data. While number six, you are doing what we call writing and presentation of findings. Now, let me talk a little bit about data analysis, which to me sometimes could be a kind of hard nut for many students or researchers to actually crack. Okay, data analysis is a critical point in the research process. The right analysis will give the right outcome. If you chose the wrong analysis, you're going to get the wrong outcome. So, but let me quickly say this, that in data analysis, you really don't have to be you really don't have to be an expert. You don't have to be an expert when it comes to data analysis, okay? But it's important in the course of conducting your research, you may need the guidance of a statistician. I'm a statistician, so many a times students and colleagues come to me to guide when it comes to statistical analysis. So you always need a researcher, I mean a statistician rather, to actually guide you when it comes to data analysis. But not even at the point of data analysis, even at the point of collecting your data, okay? So that you will collect the right data, okay? You will be properly advised on the kind of data that will give you the required results. So it is important that we get support, but you really don't have to be an expert to be able to understand statistical analysis, but you must have basic understanding of the kind of data you are collecting and the kind of analysis you can run with that particular data, and also how to interpret your finding. This is very, very important. Okay, so thank you. I'm still looking at the chat section, the comment section, in case I could pick any question. Don't hesitate to drop your question. The whole essence again is so that you can get help real time when it comes to uh, your research. Okay. Now, as I round up on this topic I've been talking about, I want to quickly comment on the area where students often get stuck. Okay. The first area is the area of choosing a topic. But recall I mentioned that it is the problem that must be first identified. After you have identified the problem, choosing the topic become very easy. Very, very easy. So you must identify the problem first. The problem could be that there is no sufficient data about students, the kind of stress students, research students, or graduate students actually pass through. What is the prevalence of dropout of graduate students maybe today in a particular place? Okay, but recall that the topic focuses on student stress. So you want to know the dropout, you want to know what is affecting them. Okay, but when you establish the problem, the topic becomes easier to coin. Now, the next thing is how do you write a clear problem statement, which is another uh, tough one many a times, even for graduate students. Okay, so if that is your area of need, please don't hesitate to drop it. And I have a lot of material that will actually be very useful to many of us. If you wouldn't mind, I can drop it in the description for this particular video. Just say help. Just type help at the comment section and I'll surely drop such. It will give you a kind of guide on how to write a clear problem statement. And again, is the another area student gets stuck is understanding the methods, the appropriate method to actually use. But again, I've said that this is what you can get even from extensive literature search. When you search through literature, you see how such problem has been understudied in the past. And the latest one, the recommendation will be in the literature on the right method to explore. And that's when you adopt it, it will go a long way to actually help you. And on the final note, another area student get stuck is interpreting the result. You see, the interesting thing is that if you have basic understanding of statistics, interpreting your research finding will be very, very clear. Recall I said you don't have to be an expert in statistics, but you can have basic understanding using confidence interval, using p-value and effect size to explain the finding of your result, because this is the language with which we communicate research. So again, I'm checking my comment section. Thank you very much, Ogechi. I can see your question. Good evening. Ogechi says, please, could you talk about inclusion and exclusion criteria as well as hypothesis? Thank you very much. This is a very wonderful question. Uh, and perhaps this is where we are going to round up for this evening. I'm going to talk about inclusion and exclusion criteria when we conduct survey. Now, this is a question that is brought out from survey. When you conduct a survey and you want to make your selection. Now, inclusion criteria, okay, are the conditions that guides the type of subject you are going to recruit into that particular study. Okay, for instance, let's say uh, I want to study smokers. Okay, maybe okay, let me look for a better example. Let's say I want to study um, pregnant women. If I'm to study pregnant women, and pregnant women is my focus. Okay, the concept that cohort is actually my focus, and it simply means my subject must be a pregnant woman. Okay, now pregnancy becomes an inclusion criteria. Before you can be part of this, number one, you must be a female. Number two, you must be pregnant. Now, but what is exclusion criteria? This is one question, one area many students mix up. Okay. Now, the exclusion criteria, these are the criteria that disqualify your subjects despite the fact that they have met the inclusion criteria. I'll repeat that again. The exclusion criteria are the criteria that disqualify your subjects, okay, despite the fact that they have met the inclusion criteria. Now, in the case of studying pregnant women, number one, I said they should be female, they should be pregnant. Now, let's say we have a case where somebody has maybe fibroid, okay? It may need pregnancy, of course, but this is not the kind of thing we want for this particular study. So that becomes an exclusion criteria. Sometimes it could even be age. So it simply means when you are selecting the subject, you have selected the subject on the basis that they met your inclusion criteria. But there are certain things that disqualify them despite meeting the inclusion criteria. Those are the exclusion criteria. I don't know if that is clear, Ogechi. Good. So, those are the things that disqualify the subjects. So, the inclusion criteria is the primary condition with which you select subjects for your study. The exclusion criteria are the circumstance under which the people you have selected becomes disqualified. Okay? I want to recruit people to actually work for me. They met all the conditions, they met all the criteria and all that. Now, but despite meeting the criteria, there are certain things I will see again that will say, no, I can't take this. Despite the fact that you have met all the criteria I listed, but this and this condition makes you disqualified from participating. Something of that nature. So that is what inclusion and exclusion criteria means. Okay. Now, the next question I can see, still coming from Ogechi, is what hypothesis means. Okay. Hypothesis is another word for claim. Okay. When you make claim. Now, usually when we do research, a researcher approaches a study with an assumption. We don't do research if we don't have an assumption at the back of our mind, okay? An assumption we want to test, or call it a claim that we want to test. For instance, if in a particular community, they have been fetching from a particular well A, and for whatever reason, a researcher felt, no, this well A is not good enough. There's another well that should be better than it. Now, it's going to come up with a kind of claim that well B that I'm making reference to is better than well A. Okay? So that is a claim from the researcher. So, and that is what we call hypothesis. Okay? Now, the claim of the researcher is the alternative hypothesis. While the default position, the well A that the people have been taking from, is the null hypothesis. It is usually the hypothesis of no difference, hypothesis of no change, hypothesis of no association. That is what null hypothesis means. So, to make it clearer, hypotheses are claims. And there are two possible claims in academic research. It's either you have a null hypothesis or alternative hypothesis. The alternative hypothesis is usually the assumption, okay, of the researcher, while the null hypothesis is the default ground, okay, that the researcher is trying to challenge. It's the status quo that the researcher is trying to challenge. That is what hypothesis mean. So when we say hypothesis testing, usually when we want to conduct a study, depending on the type of study we are conducting. It's not in every case or every case of academic study or research study that we may need to come up with hypothesis. If you are doing exploratory research, your focus may be on research question, okay? But more often when you are doing experimental study, you want to come up with hypothesis, okay? You make a claim and then you want to test that particular claim, okay? Some people believe that when you want to state your claim, just state the alternative hypothesis alone. There will always be a default position. So in academic research, more often we are challenging the null hypothesis. We are saying that when A is not good enough, when A is not as good as when B. So what we are doing essentially is that we want to test if that status quo actually holds ground of factors being put into consideration. So that is what hypothesis itself means. I don't want to go deep into how we begin to test the hypothesis, level of significance, and all that. That will be beyond the scope of the question. But if you still need information on that, please don't hesitate to explore my channel. I have full video on hypothesis testing. Okay. Thank you very much, Ogechi. I think at this point, I want us to begin to round up. The idea is to make it 40 minutes, 30 minutes every time we come online this way, and so that we can chat and take questions. So I want to appreciate everyone that has joined me this evening. Please don't hesitate to join in the next class. I'll be coming on from time to time to share ideas, to bring clarity on different aspects of academic research. And please don't hesitate to share this video, like it, and I'll be back again. Thank you very much, and bye for now.